Hi everyone. So I think I think it's time to have a discussion. I want to tell you about what I've been through in the last decade. I know I'm not a interesting person, but I feel like this is something that needs to be discussed. I feel like this is a situation that nobody else needs to go into, that nobody else needs to go through. I'm not very good at talking, and I hope that you'll listen to my story. I'm I'm a normal person. Um, I say normal person. I have ADHD and autism. Well, I'm on the autism spectrum. I have ADHD and I'm on the autism spectrum. I'm going to try and be as honest and forthright as I can in this video. And it's going to be a long video because there's a lot. There's a lot. So, for those who don't know me, hi, my name is Bobby. I am a person. I'm a person who lives in America. I have not had the greatest home life for most of my life. I don't have the greatest health. I have a lot of health issues, and have for as long as I've been an adult. Heck, I probably had them as a kid, but my family doesn't believe in doctors, so we wouldn't know about my health problems when I was a kid. I was always told that you trust the people in charge, that they want what's best for you, and you trust them. I have a little boy. Well, not so little anymore. He's almost 18. But I don't have custody of him. And this is the story of why I don't have custody of him and what happened to me and what should never happen to anybody else. I may mix up dates. I may get information wrong. The information that I have is from my own perspective, but also I have receipts, I have court documents, I have emails, I have letters from the various people involved. So let's go ahead and start with me, because it starts with me and my son. I love my son more than anything in the world. He's my joy. He always has been. When he was born, I had been homeless previously. At the time that I was pregnant with him, I had been staying with family, or people that I thought of as family. I guess they didn't think of me as family when I got pregnant, despite birth control, despite using protection. I got pregnant. Like, yeah, used a condom, used birth control, still got pregnant. I was kicked out because my family, the people that I thought was family, did not want me in their home as an unwed pregnant woman. And so I ended up homeless and had the great opportunity to get into a pregnancy home. And my son was born while I lived in the pregnancy home. He was the first child born in that particular pregnancy home. And I will forever be grateful to them for giving us place. After he was born, I got a job and got an apartment, which was necessary. At that pregnancy home, you had to be working within 2 weeks of having your child, which was difficult. I had a hard pregnancy. I now know that it's because of my genetic health problems, but at the time I was terrified. And I did what I could to try and give my son a life. We got an apartment. I went back to school while working. I wanted to be a teacher. I liked math. I wanted to be a math teacher, so I went to college. And I was doing very well in my classes. I joined the student council. I'd been student council senator, and then I got voted in as a student council secretary, which was fantastic, and I was so happy. I was doing so well. And then I got a brain tumor. Sorry, let me step back a little bit. I started getting sick, and I went to the doctors, I went to the hospital, and nobody could tell me why I was getting sick. They couldn't tell me what was going on. And slowly I couldn't keep up with daily things. I was struggling. Keep in mind, I didn't really have a lot of family. And I had been homeless on and off for most of my life, most of my adult life, starting at 16. So I was doing everything I could. Had roommates to try and help pay bills and try and help me take care of a little child. And things kept falling through. At the time, I was a tutor at the college that I went to. I wanted to be a teacher, so I was also doing student teaching, as well as the student council that I was on I kept getting sick, and we lost our place to live. Like, my roommates that were there to help pay the bills, didn't pay any of the bills, and they left us high and dry. And so we ended up with me getting progressively sicker, ended up in another shelter. And I felt so bad about that, taking my son back into a shelter. But I did what I could. And I kept getting sicker and sicker. They finally discovered, when my son was about 2 years old, that I had a brain tumor that was the size of a golf ball. And it was right here in my head. As you see, I have a scar here. It turns out that was the cause of my brain tumor. Part of my health problems is a genetic condition that makes all of my connective tissue form wrong. And when I was very young, my brother beat my head on a rock, and it did not heal well. And apparently, because of it healing wrong, because my genetic condition, the damage that was done to my head when I was a young child ended up forming this tumor. The tissue didn't heal properly, and it formed a golf ball sized tumor. And I had to have surgery. And I lost my son for a year at that point. Like, a friend of mine took care of him. It took me a year to recover, and I went back to school. I'm telling you this because I've had a lot of health problems. I've had a lot, and I understand that. So we fast forward. That was in 2009 when I had the brain tumor. At that point, the doctors told me that there was a lot that said that I wouldn't be able to work. They said I was having seizures. I applied for disability, was denied so many times. The reason that was given for the denials was that since I was a single mother, I was obviously capable of taking care of a child, and since I was educated that I couldn't be disabled. Again, we didn't know about my genetic conditions. They told me that I was having seizures, that they couldn't identify where the seizures were coming from. They were telling me a lot of stuff that I believed because they were the experts. I became afraid to leave my house a lot. I became afraid to do anything because I was afraid that I would have a seizure and would get harmed. I had severe anxiety, and I was still trying to raise my son after I recovered from my brain tumor. Well, recovered from the surgery of the brain tumor. Again, I still thought that I was going through, that I was having seizures. That's what they told me they were. We know better now. There was a lot, and years passed. And then we moved to Montana because my mom lived here. And she said that she wanted to help me and she wanted me to be a part of her life. So we lived here. And we lived with my mom for a couple of months before it went bad. And when I say it went bad, what I mean is that she said some really horrible things to me that hurt a lot. Not just me. She said horrible things about my son, horrible things about everything. That was in 2013. So, yeah, my son was almost 6 years old when we moved here. He had already been diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age because he kept accidentally doing things that put himself and other people in danger just from the ADHD. And he was in therapy from a young age because I was in therapy and I wanted the best for him. And so he went through a lot. He had a tough early start, and it's my fault because I'm not really able to be the mom that he needed. And I understand that I was not the best. I love him and I tried, but I was not the best. And that's partly my fault, but a lot of it's the supports that we have. So back to my mother. The things that she was saying that were hurtful to me and him. She said a lot of hurtful things, but a lot of things that she said that she felt that she was going to do in order to train my child, that he needed more, like he had a very structured existence. He had ADHD, so we had to make sure everything was structured and everything was good to go as far as his therapists were concerned. Did all the stuff that we could that they said. But she felt that those were the wrong way to handle things and that he needed a more forceful approach. And that forceful approach included him not being able to. She didn't want him to laugh. She didn't want him to make any noise. She wanted him trained the way that she trained me when I was a kid. And that was that children should not be seen or heard. That they should be perfectly behaved at all times and should always fear for their lives. And she told me that if I wasn't going to do that to him and train him properly, that I should just myself and give him to somebody who would teach him how to behave like a human being. Again, he wasn't even 6 years old. She said that he was that he was too happy. I believe the exact words that she used, or close enough, were that if you allow children to be happy, that they become, what is the word? I'm really bad at words. That if you allow children to be happy, they become used to it. That's not the word. I can't think of the word. I know it's one of those words that everybody uses for everything, and my brain just does not work right now. Yeah, she said that he would expect people to be nice to him and expect happy things in his life, and she didn't think that it was appropriate for a child to expect goodness, or to have any joy in their lives, is the sentiment. It came to a head when it was a week away from his birthday, and I wanted to get him a cake and celebrate his 6th birthday. And she got mad because if we celebrated his birthday, she said it forced her and my stepfather to acknowledge his existence and to be nice to him, and would teach him that people would want to think about him, that people would want to celebrate him, and that no child should have that type of mentality. So she got mad. And yeah, she told me that she would make sure that I would never get to see him again. And also told me to off myself. And not in a nice way, not even in a conversational way. And at the time I had severe anxiety, and I have depression, and these were not fun things. About it. I thought I heard somebody at the door. But yeah, I had a mental breakdown from this, and my mom's solution was to try and have me committed, which she took me to the hospital and dropped me off, which I guess I'm lucky that she took me to the hospital, at least, since she lived miles outside of town, and it's better than what she did next time. And yeah, she kept my son and took me to the hospital and told me that I was never welcome back at her place. And so yeah, I ended up getting into another shelter. I spent the week in the hospital. Didn't accept me, by the way. They didn't commit me. They sent me to a overnight homeless shelter, where I would not be able to have my son. And I spent the weekend there because my mom dropped me off Friday evening at the hospital, so I spent the entire weekend. And had no place to go, so I went to that shelter, and it was a terrifying experience. And yeah, Monday morning I walked to my case manager's office, and when they opened, I was sitting outside my case manager's office waiting, and my case manager helped me get into another shelter, one that was a family shelter that when I got approval I would be able to have my son back. And 2 weeks later, after missing my son's birthday because they wouldn't let me see him, my mother wouldn't let me see him, 2 weeks later, I had a place, and the state said yes, like they helped me get my son back from my mother. And I'm aware this is all a big lead up to the actual story of what happened, but I feel like there's a lot that went on. And So we're at this other shelter, and my mom says that she never wants to interact with me again. But it's a small town, and so people know her, and they see me not living with my mother. And they have questions. And eventually she decides she wants to be part of my life again. And I didn't know how to say no. I was told that family, I have to let her in. But that has little to do with this part of the story. After being in the shelter for a couple of months, we got subsidized housing. Keep in mind, I was still fighting for disability, still had severe anxiety. My son is now 6 years old. And we get into subsidized housing, have a nice apartment. He's in school. Everything is going good. Until it's not. I was a single mother. I would stay home. My case management office would come, and my case manager would accompany me to the grocery store because I still thought that I was having seizures. So I'd spend most of my time at home. And my son was growing up and had no job. With subsidized housing, we had very limited funds. I had no job. I had no way to make money. I was doing what I could. I tried working multiple times, multiple ways, and nothing was working out for me. My anxiety was so severe, I'd have panic attacks. Truthfully, what finally helped me get over my anxiety was earbuds. I had a pair of Power Beats that I eventually got that would help me. The wind's blowing and it blew the screen door. That's what that was. So I could have music playing that would lower my anxiety when I was out in public. And I started doing better. And I got out and I started dating. Truthfully wasn't the best situation, but I was trying. My therapist, my son's therapist, my case management office were encouraging me to start trying to have a full life. And I did. I tried. And my son had lots of anxiety because I've had a lot of health problems. And he was still in his therapy, and his therapist suggested that because I was doing all of this stuff, I was trying and doing all the stuff that I could. I'm still afraid to go outside, but her suggestion was after my son went to sleep that I go for walks around the neighborhood. And we had nice neighbors and everything that I talked to. We were all fairly close. And so when I'd go for walks, I would leave the front door, the screen door closed and the front door open, and the neighbors would keep an eye on the place. And yeah, I did not know. Apparently my son would wake up and have really bad anxiety about this, and the therapist suggested, let him know, let him be a part of this, tell him when you're going out for a walk, he needs to learn how to be on his own stuff. I was also having a lot more physical health problems at this time. My doctors had put me on medicine that they were trying to help with new medicine for the mental health stuff. They diagnosed me as schizophrenic, which was fun. Turns out none of that's true, and we'll come back to that because it absolutely relates to the seizures that they said that I was having. Actually, you know what? We're not going to come back to it. We're going to talk about it right now, because what it was later on, lots of tests were done. Because keep in mind, they could never figure out where these seizures were coming from. They were telling me that they were seizures. It wasn't seizures. I'm going to tell you it wasn't seizures. And what they were saying was schizophrenia wasn't schizophrenia. Technically, they diagnosed me as schizoaffective disorder because they said it was bipolar with schizophrenia. That's not true. That's not what was happening. We found out later that what was happening was I was having severe PTSD flashbacks. And so these seizures that they were saying that I was having weren't seizures, because they had said that they were petit mal seizures, which, you know, isn't the big grand mal seizures where it's like a seizing body. I was having dissociative states that they were saying were seizures. Turns out those dissociative states were PTSD flashbacks, where because of my childhood, because of a lot of the stuff that I went through, I was having PTSD. And that also, the reason why it wasn't hallucinations is that they were PTSD flashbacks of the stuff that my mother did and said to me growing up. And not just my mother, but her voice is the loudest in my head, or what we refer to as my brain, like what me and my husband now refer to as my brain lying to me, because of the training my mother did when I was a kid. Yeah. So PTSD, not seizures, not schizophrenic, whole bunch of stuff. And it took years to understand what that was. But when the doctor said, you have this, I believed them, because they're the experts. And that leads into the next part of the story. So yeah, they put me on medicines for schizoaffective, and those medicines didn't, at first they helped, or seemed to help. Hold on, I'm gonna latch the screen door because it is just flopping around and making noise. Give me one. Sorry about that. Hopefully it won't do the thing anymore. So yeah, they gave me medicine for schizoaffective disorder. And I didn't know at the time that part of my genetic condition, or part of my stuff, and had the test years later, but I was having a reaction to one of them. And a reaction is the wrong word. Because of my genetic condition, I had trouble metabolizing things. And apparently, I can't metabolize a certain type of one of the medicines that they were giving me. I can't metabolize a lot of things. But that means that this medicine that is super easy for most people to handle was too much for my body. And despite being on the lowest dose, and them having no clue what was happening, I was ODing on it. And it, like, yeah, it's supposed to be one of the easiest. It's one that they give everybody. But what would happen is that this medicine causes sleepiness. It usually causes a little bit of drowsiness until you get used to it. But with the way my body works, it never got out of my system. And so that little bit that would normally make people a little drowsy until they get used to it, my body didn't get used to it. I had extreme amounts of this medicine in my bloodstream. And it was making me sleep all the time. I was having trouble staying awake. Like literally for 15 minutes a day, at a time, not a day, but 15 minutes at a time, I could get up and wake up. And while taking care of a 6-year-old, that's difficult. And unfortunate for him, because I wasn't capable of being a good mom And again, I didn't know what was happening. I went to the doctors. I asked them, I begged them, I said, this medicine's, like, it started when you gave me this medicine. There's something wrong. They gave me 3 medicines at the same time. I said, it has to be one of these. And they said, no, none of those medicines cause that. There's no way. This is all you. It's you making excuses. And they said that, I believe exactly what I was told was that I needed to go on to an all organic diet, that I needed to give up carbs. Yeah, well, that's fun when you have no income and are on welfare. You can easily do that. No, I couldn't. I tried. I started eating healthier. I started trying to exercise, which they said to exercise. They told me to try doing a sleep schedule. Did a sleep schedule. When nothing worked, after months of trying this, they said, this is you. You're addicted to sleep. You need to wean yourself off of sleep. And I was so mad, but I was trying to be a good mom. So I was trying to force myself to stay awake, which was impossible. And again, single mom. So this is where we get into it, and there are this is where the story gets into a lot of triggers for a lot of people, and I'm sorry, but it has to be discussed here. My sweet, adorable 6-year-old boy, I tried to do the best that I could to make sure that he was taken care of. He was in therapy, he was in case management. We had something similar to Brothers and Sisters, where he had a mentor that would come and take him out to go do the things that I couldn't. Teaching him how to go fishing. They called it socialization, because I was still terrified of everything outside of my apartment. And so, yeah, he had friends in the apartment complex that would come over. Tried to do the best I could to make it as safe as possible. If he wanted to go over to somebody's houses, we had play dates that were arranged. Like, I had to know the parents. We had to have some form. Like, I had to supervise. The parents had to supervise. And at this point, he was in kindergarten or first grade. He wasn't quite 7 yet. And I was trying and I was failing. And he had a kid in his class that I had been to the kid's house before. We had play dates at this kid's house. I met the father. The kid lived with his father and his mother wasn't in the picture. And the wind's picking up even more. But yeah, one day the kid and his father came over. I do have to specify, when I say, I want to specify this, our apartment was directly across the street from my son's school, like directly across one of the minor streets from the school. So he would walk out the back gate of the school and look directly across the crosswalk to our apartment. So he would walk himself to and from school from our apartment that was within sight of the gate of the school. I would always leave the screen door unlatched. The main door was usually open, except in wintertime, so he could let himself in. And I had attempted to get a job. During all this, I was trying to work full-time because, I've been denied disability so many times. I gotta have a way to support my kid. And every time it went wrong. But so he could walk himself to and from school because it was literally directly across a minor street with a crossing guard accompanying him. And one day he came home from school and the friend accompanied him with the friend's father. And they said, hey, can Warren come over for a play date? And I was already cooking dinner at the stove, and I said, as long as he's back by 5 o'clock, because I made a lot of things from scratch at that point. Like, I was home all the time, and we didn't have a lot of money. Yeah, I'm cooking from scratch, making healthy meals, or at least as healthy as I knew how. And so I said he can go play as long as you accompany him back. They lived like the next building over. Technically a different apartment complex, but just across the fence. And everything seemed fine. They brought him back on time, no problem. 2 weeks later, and I found out that during this time that my son went over there, it was the only time he went on a play date over to their house when I wasn't accompanying them, and that was because I was cooking and thought everything would be okay. And so 2 weeks later, and I found out that during that time, the child, the boy that was his friend, had taught him a game. And that game was not appropriate. It wasn't a game. It was bad. And I found out because that boy told my son to teach other kids this game. That it was a game that adults couldn't know about and kids needed to know. And not only that, he had been telling other kids that he taught my son a game and to go ask my son to play this game. Now, I found out later that there's more to this, a lot more. But in the moment, that's what I knew, that he taught my son a game. And I called the cops. I didn't know what to do. I called my case management. I called the police, and I found my son playing this game with another kid, one of my friend's kids actually, and it never spoke. I never spoke to this woman again. She took her kids, and wanted nothing to do with us, and that's understandable. But yeah, I called the police. I didn't know what else to do. And they said, okay, they did an investigation and said, your son was definitely taught this game by this other kid. But the other kid's father works for the police. And that kid is the same age as your son. And the father is not giving us permission to interview his son. And they said there's nothing we can do. That's it. There's nothing we can do. It's considered child on child. The kid is underage. The parent does not have to give us permission to speak to this child, and there is nothing that can be done at this point. And I said, okay, what do I do? And they said, well, your son can't be around other kids. He can't be around other kids. And I said, okay, how do I deal with this? And they said, well, he has to go into special classes where he has a teacher that that's specifically dedicated to him. We need to cancel all of his after-school programs that he was enrolled in. We need to cancel all of the summer camps that you had enrolled him in. He can't go to therapy anymore because the therapist's office has children. And we need you to be with him 24/7. And it's like, how do I do this? You want me to have a job so we have a place to live. I'm not the healthiest. And they said, we don't care. You have to do this. We don't know how. And I tried. As I said, they canceled his therapy because, well, technically they didn't cancel it. Full disclosure, they did not cancel it. They said that he could not have therapy in the therapy office because other kids could be in the office or in the waiting room or somewhere in the office. So he couldn't do therapy in the office. So they said, okay, we will do therapy at home, but part of, we only have the allotted time for therapy, and his therapist traveling is going to take up part of that time. So instead of having a 50-minute therapy appointment, it was a 10-minute therapy appointment with 20 minutes for each way for the therapist to travel. And they said he can't be out of supervision. You have to supervise him 24/7. If he is out of his bedroom, you need to be up and awake and with him. And it got to be too much. And this is where his therapist said, okay, go ahead and take walks while he's asleep, while he's in bed. Go ahead and take walks. Go do your own thing. Have somebody else watch him, have a neighbor watch him, whatever, to get you some time to not be 24/7 attached to him. And didn't go well. He got mad at me for taking walks. And it wasn't just taking walks. Like, I would take a walk, and I'd go to the bar down the way and sing a song at karaoke. And the neighbors were watching him, but they weren't in the house. They were sitting outside on the porch. And it got to be where even when I would step outside to sit outside on the porch and he woke up and didn't see me directly inside, he would freak out. And he told his therapist about that. He didn't share it with me, but he told his therapist, and they said, you can't go on walks anymore, and we need you with him 24/7. You can't go on walks. You can't do anything on your own. I said, okay, help me, please help me. I am struggling. I'm struggling with all of this, and I'm having trouble staying awake. They said they canceled his summer programs that he was enrolled in. I said, okay, so you want me, like, I was having trouble enough while he was in school. And despite that, you want me during the summer to take care of him 24/7. You said that he can't go to childcare because there's other kids there. So I can't get a job, but I have to have a job to support us. We have no way to make money. We have no way to pay bills. We have no way to do anything. And they said, okay, what we can do is we can take him for therapy. They're like, because one of my big problems was like, how is this going to get better if he doesn't have therapy? And there's a whole bunch that was going on. It's a lot. It's a huge amount to break down. So again, they canceled therapy. 10 minutes at a time, which isn't enough to really help anybody. A 10-minute therapy session isn't enough, especially with something this big. And they said that he is never allowed around other kids unsupervised. He has to have an adult with him the entire time. He was struggling under this, and he kept sneaking out of the house when my back was turned. If I went to the bathroom, he would sneak out. If I was cooking and was making any noise in the kitchen doing dishes, he would sneak out. And he didn't understand why he went from being this carefree child to having to stay inside all the time, and that's understandable. And I was sick. This time, that other kid was still telling other kids, they were still in the same class. And I did have him moved classes. I asked the school to move him classes. And a week later, that boy ended up in his class again. And that's kind of important for later on. Because the boy ended up in his class so many times, every time. My son switched schools a couple years later. And a week after he switched schools, that boy ended up in his new school, in his new class. Heck, as far as I know, that kid's still in his class. And it was hard to get away from it. And he was telling other kids to go ask my son about this game. And yeah, it was difficult. It came to a head when I was letting my son ride his bike on the path in front of our apartments. I was sitting at the window watching him, and somebody reported that my son was outside alone. Didn't matter if I was inside watching him from the window. They said that I had to be outside. Again, also, I was having a lot of health problems at this point. A lot of health problems, having trouble staying awake. I was sick a lot. And I told them, they came at me. They were like, you need to keep him away from everybody else. And I said, okay, you want this? Please help me. So they said, okay, we will take him for an intensive therapeutic group home. They're like, he will be gone maybe 3 weeks. And it'll be an intensive therapy boot camp to try and explain to him that this is bad. And they, as I said, there was a lot. It's a lot to keep track of. And it's been a while, so I apologize if I'm stating things wrong or in the wrong order and going back and forth, because one of the things that they did was they told me that I was not allowed to tell anybody else what had happened to him, because the father could sue me because defamation. And also, since another child was involved, that I couldn't let anybody else in the apartment complex or in the school know what that kid had taught my son. And they also said that because they wanted him to not have trauma regarding this, that they didn't want to phrase it as a negative thing that happened, because they were afraid that it would traumatize him for the future, that it would paint his view of sexuality and his body. And they didn't want that, so they said that we couldn't tell him that this was something that was badly done to him, that it was in any way traumatic or dangerous or harmful. They said that it was just to say that it was inappropriate. And he didn't understand what I meant by inappropriate, and that was part of the problem. And I was doing what they told me. And I feel so bad that I believed them. Okay, so they took him to the group home. And they said that he would be able to call me every day. They told him that it was like a summer camp. So they didn't let me pack for him. He packed his swimming trunks and his Hulk smash gloves because he thought he was going to summer camp. And they told me that this camp was something that was through the state, and the only way that they could get him this therapy that he needed was by opening a case against me, and that was the only way you could get help. And then they told me that admission of or that asking for help is an admission of neglect. And yeah, they said that was just to get him into this therapy, that was the only way they could get him the assistance, because there was a limit on what type of assistance children could get. And he didn't qualify because we were low income and didn't have good benefits. That he didn't qualify for any other type at that point that would actually help. So they said, don't worry about it. It's 3 weeks. He'll be back in 3 weeks. And I said, okay, whatever we need to do to help my son, to do what's best for him. And they said I could call him and that he could call me and that we could visit. And every time I called, they said, no, you can't talk to him. You can't talk to him. And after a week, I got a letter in the mail, and it said, the state has taken custody of your child. This is a court case has been opened for temporary custody of your child, and here is your appointed public defender and a hearing date. And I didn't know what was going on. And I called my therapist, called my case manager, and called my son's therapist, called everybody, and called this public defender, and called the CFS worker that was helping with this. And they said, because you needed help, we had to list this as neglect case in order for you to get this assistance, in order for your son to get this assistance. Don't worry. This doesn't mean anything. We're not taking custody of him. This is just what needs to happen for him to get that help. And I believed them. And I went to the public defender and had the appointment with her, told her what happened, and she said, okay, well, the only way that he can get this assistance in the group home is if you plead no contest. You have to admit neglect. And then she said, don't worry, maximum, it's 3 months. And I was like, 3 months? They said 3 weeks. And she's like, oh, no, it's 3 months max. And so we go to the hearing, and she tells the judge that I plead no contest. And the judge says, okay, we are taking temporary custody for 3 to 6 months. And I was like, 3 to 6 months? They said 3 weeks. She said 3 months. Why are you saying 3 to 6 months? And my public defender, my lawyer, says, oh, no. That's just a maximum. And the judge goes, no, the program, the therapeutic program that we put him in the group home is a minimum of 3 months program. It's 3 to 6 month program. There's no chance it's going to be less than 3 months. But he'll be back by, and by the way, this happened right before his birthday, like a month before his birthday that they took him. And they said he should be back by Halloween. Keep in mind, they told me and my son both that it'd be 3 weeks. Then they told us 3 months. So yeah, now they're like, he should be back by Halloween. And I said, okay, his birthday's coming up, and we have a tradition of going to the fair every year for his birthday. Can I still take him? Can we have a visit appointed for his birthday? And the judge said, oh yeah, no problem. Like, definitely, like, court appointed, we'll make sure it's covered. And I believed them. And I did what I was told to do. I kept, like, they said, okay, here's a treatment plan that you have to finish all this stuff before you can get him back. And it was like, okay, just trying to do the stuff, trying to do everything. And so one of the things was that I needed somebody else to help me watch him. So my brother-in-law came, who was the only person that I was still kind of close to in my family. Him and my sister broke up years before, and he really didn't have a place in Arizona. And so he was gonna come and help me get stuff in order and help me take care of my son. And he showed up, and we tried to get him put on the lease to my apartment, like, tried to say that, like, oh, hey, he's gonna stay and help while we wait for my son to come back, like, he's gonna be back in a couple months. And I got evicted. Well, let's table that one for a second, because my son's birthday had been a month later from this hearing. Well, less than a month. And it came time for that visit. And it turns out that nobody, even though the judge had said yes, And everybody involved said yes, and I bought the tickets to the fair and got everything for my son like I'd been saving up forever, and tried to do everything so that he would have a good birthday. And the day of the fair, I'm at the fair waiting for them to show up, and it turns out the CPS, it's Child and Family Services here in Montana, worker was off that day, and she did not arrange for anybody else to cover this appointed visit. And she said that she assumed that the group home would have somebody that would supervise and bring him to the visit. And the group home said that they had assumed that she would. And it all got blamed on me because they said that I didn't communicate well enough about this. And they told my son that I just didn't want, that I didn't do what I was supposed to. And that's quite the story. But so in order to help my brother-in-law, which at this point, like, as I had known him as my brother since I was a kid. I'm the youngest in my family. Since I was a kid, he was my brother. He showed up. We tried to get him put on the lease to our apartment, and they said no. They said, you can't add anybody to your lease. And I said, okay. And he's like, fine. He went and got a job and got a place to live, like, pretty much immediately. He had experience at pizza places, so he got a job at a pizza place down the road, and his manager was letting him stay there, or letting him stay with her. And he would come by and help me out. And the apartment complex I was living in issued me an eviction notice for failure to notify of change in household composition. And they said part of it was that my son moved out and I didn't notify them. And it's because I didn't expect him to be gone for long. Like, I thought he was going to be right back. And the other one was that they said that since my brother was there helping me out with stuff, that it didn't matter if he had another place to live. That because he was helping me most days. Again, keep in mind, I was still at the point where I was having trouble staying awake and having a lot of health problems. But they said because he was there, that they considered that him living with me. And they didn't care if there was proof that he had a different residence. That since he was there, that was proof enough. And they, because of change in household composition, they removed our subsidy. And so our subsidized housing with stuff, with ways that I figured out and everything, like based on our subsidized rent amount, I had enough to pay that pay up a little while. I was able to make sure that we had a place to live, a stable place to live. And they took away our subsidy, which means that our rent went up to an astronomical amount. At the time, it went up to $910 a month, I think it was, which when I didn't work was more than I could afford, by a lot. And they evicted me. Lost everything, and I ended up homeless again, and ended up living in a shelter, like, not just in a shelter. At first, when my mom found out that I was evicted again, she got mad. But my stepfather had just passed away. In between all of this, it was me trying different situations. I tried to be a live-in caregiver, live-in care attendant for someone who was elderly, and that situation went severely wrong. Because people will use people, and this was not somebody that anybody should have to work for. But yeah, I tried multiple ways to stay out of the homeless shelters and to try and get a place to live, to try and while doing things correctly. But my stepfather had just passed away, and my mom said, why don't you come here? Like, you can come back. The reason why I treated you so horribly in the past was because of your stepfather. He hated you. Now he's not around. You can come here. And I didn't have another option except going into the homeless shelter. And so I went to stay with my mom. And it went bad. A lot of things go bad. But she's a very controlling person, and I did one thing wrong. And she left me by the side of the road with no place to go, no clue what was going on. Like, literally, it was, oh, hey, we were going grocery shopping, and she pulled over and said, like, we were just finished grocery shopping. We're heading back out to her house, and she pulled over on the side of a major street and said, yeah, you know what, I want the evening to myself, find something to do, I will pick you up tomorrow. And then the next day rolled around, and she called me and said, where are you? And I told her where I was, and she said, okay, I'll come pick you up in a couple hours. I've got a work meeting, and I'll come pick you up after that. And I waited there. And keep in mind, I didn't have any money. I didn't have anything. I crashed out on an acquaintance's living room floor for the night. And my acquaintance that I was staying with didn't have any extra food or money to be able to give me anything to eat, so I hadn't eaten. And I had a gift card for Walmart in my purse, and I thought, okay, I'll go to Walmart and get something for me to eat there, and just let my mom know that that's where I'll be. And so I texted my mom and said, when you pick me up, I'm going to be at Walmart. I haven't eaten, and I have that gift card, and I'm going to just grab something to eat real quick. And my mom immediately called me while I was on my way to Walmart and said, get your ass to Target. I will be there in 5 minutes. And she picked me up at Target and screamed at me about how I was an ungrateful little, for interrupting her day by telling her that I would be at Walmart when she wanted to pick me up, and that I needed to keep quiet and not interrupt her again. And I stayed quiet. For the entire trip back to her house, I stayed quiet because that's what she told me to do. And when we got back to her house, she stormed out of the car, screaming at me to go pack my shit, that she was tired of my bullshit. And she gave me 5 minutes to pack up what I could, drove me back into town, and dropped me off in the exact same place as she dropped me off the first time. And left me and all my stuff on the side of the road and told me to never contact her again. And this is a fairly sanitized version of that story because it's bad. Yeah. So I made my way to the homeless shelter and stayed there and talked to my case management office. There were lots of plans during this time for me to get a job, get an education, all of this stuff. I got it working with Voc Rehab. While trying to get my son back, I got working with vocational rehabilitation services. And they got me permission to go to beauty school. Like, I got enrolled to beauty school the day before beauty school was supposed to start. CFS said that I couldn't attend beauty school because if I attended beauty school, which was a multi-month long program that was Monday through Friday 9 to 5, that they felt that I wouldn't be available for any therapy appointments that they wanted me to attend with my son, or any visitations, or any of the appointments that he had that were scheduled during the weekday. So they said I couldn't work during the weekday. And so I couldn't do beauty school. So we agreed not on beauty school. Finally, we got me permission to go get my CDL, which I want to specify. Eventually, we got me permission to go get my CDL. Now, during all of that time of me like being sick and everything, I finally went off of all the medications that I had been on against my therapist's orders, or my med management's orders. Against the recommendation, I decided I can't do this. I went off of the medication to see what was causing it, and immediately was more wide awake, was more aware, was having a lot better time, a lot easier time. I was still sick, but I wasn't having trouble staying awake 24/7. And we also got me, because I went against my med management's orders, she told the courts that anybody who has mental health issues is not capable of being a parent, and that they should deny me any chance of getting my son back. Which really messed up with her, because she went above and beyond what she should be allowed and was stripped of her ability to actually work with the courts from that point on. I did get a different med management provider who believed me when I said that it was these medicines causing this, and I found out later she didn't believe me, but she was at least willing to run the tests to see if the meds were causing this, because she wanted to disprove it. Since I was saying that the previous person was saying that this wasn't possible, she figured if she proved that it was not possible, that would make a big difference. Well, it proved in my favor. She did the genetic testing that shows how your body metabolizes different stuff. And it proved that one of those medicines was causing this, and it was the most innocent of any of the meds that I was on. But also proved that one of the medicines that I was on was actually working, which was awesome at the time. Because then we knew that, yeah, one of the medicines I was on was not only working, it was like helping a lot. As long as the other one wasn't knocking me back down. And that was also when we found out that I had been misdiagnosed. And that I didn't have schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder or seizures. And that was really, it made me feel like I wasn't insane. And that was a good thing. And so, yeah, I started going to CDL school. Like, I love driving. Okay, CDL school, let's do it. And I started CDL school, and I was doing really well. And I was still not feeling the best. And I had an instance where I ended up in the hospital. And it was tough. Like, I was struggling, and I went to my doctor, and so this was a problem that had been recurring. Something that happened every time I had my menstruation cycle. I was collapsing, and I had been to the hospital about it multiple times. They did scans. They said it's just kidney stones, don't worry about it. It's just hormones, don't worry about this. So at this point, I had been working with my doctor for a while, like trying all of these remedies for kidney stones, all of these, like they had me on different birth control for hormones, all of this stuff. And she finally goes, you know what? They did all the scans. They've never sent me the scans. I'm going to request the scans. And she requested the scans. And yeah, the hospital fucked up. Because what the scans showed was that I had, uterine fibroids that were large enough and were everywhere enough that it was hurting me. They needed to do emergency surgery. They needed to do surgery very quickly. They were cancerous. And one of my ovaries with like no blood flow. It wasn't even showing up. Actually, they didn't even take out that ovary. I still have it. Don't know what's going on with it because, yeah. But yeah, I had 1 week left of CDL school when she got these scans and sent me to doctors, and they went, whoa, we need to get you in for surgery immediately. I was still living at a shelter. I was still living in a homeless shelter at this point. And I was so terrified, but you do what you gotta do. And when I say homeless shelter, this isn't like not one, it's not one where you have your own room or anything. This is like a gymnasium full of bunk beds that you get a little cot in. But I was making the best I could. And yeah, I had 1 week left of CDL school when they said, you need to have surgery. You have to have a full hysterectomy. There's nothing else that we can do at this point. If you want to live, you have to have a full hysterectomy. And I did. I took 2 weeks off of CDL school. I took a 2-week break and got everything scheduled for the surgery. And the surgery was it took a little bit to get in for it. And I took 2 weeks to get prepped for the surgery, like to make sure that I had everything getting ready, make sure that everybody involved with my custody case with my son, that all of that was going okay, was trying to do everything. And I finished, they scheduled the surgery, and they gave me just enough time to finish my last week of CDL school. And I went and finished CDL school and I finished the test. I aced the test. Like the last test of the day on such and such day. And the next day, because it was the last test of the day, they couldn't actually give me my license. Like they couldn't do the picture for the license and everything because I was in a different building that already closed up by the time we finished my test. So the next morning was my surgery, and before surgery, like on my way to the surgery, I went to the the driver's licensing with my proof that I passed my test and got my CDL picture taken so that by the time I recovered from the surgery, I would have my CDL, actually have hard copy of my CDL. And CDL's commercial driver's license for anybody who doesn't know. But yeah, and then after taking my picture, which I was literally prepping for surgery, so I was wearing my bathrobe. Wasn't dressed up at all. I was just like, I just want this done. Like, I want to have this in hand. And I went and had my surgery immediately after. And I was recovering. They gave me a semi-private room at the shelter to recover in. just means that, like, instead of being kicked out during the day, it was a room that like 4 people could stay in, and you could have some of your stuff in there with you instead of not being able to bring your own stuff in. And I got to stay in there they had approved me for 2 months, but yeah, at the 2-week mark, they kicked me out of the shelter because they didn't have enough room for everybody. But I got to recover there enough that within 2 weeks I had a job waiting for me. And I started almost immediately. Now, what I didn't find out is that they told my son that I just didn't want anything to do with him during this time, that I had decided that I didn't want him back, and that I wasn't going to do anything that was necessary to get him back. And I didn't know any of that. They told me that I couldn't tell him about my health problems because he had anxiety about me having health problems. So they said they didn't want him to know, that it would cause too much trauma to him to know about me having cancer after I already had brain surgery when he was a kid. And so, yeah, I fought for him. I fought for him for so long. And he doesn't know. He thinks I just didn't want him. But okay, so I got my CDL, got a job, started like staying with other people because I couldn't go back to the shelter. You have a limited amount of time that you can stay there, and you can stay there for like 45 days, and then you have to be gone for a month, and then you could come back for another 45 days. So I had to like go find somewhere else to stay, and was sleeping on people's couches while working as a truck driver. It was an in-town truck driver because I couldn't do over the road if I wanted custody of my son back, but it was an in-town route driving position. It was fairly well paid enough. I was able to get a place to live. During that time, I met my current husband. I say current, he's the only husband I've ever had, but he's still my husband. We didn't get married right away. We became friends. He helped me through the uterine cancer. He helped me with a lot of stuff, and he was my best friend. And then we got married, and I love him so much. He supported me through a lot. He supported me through all this. And okay, so I got a place to live. I was working as a route driver. I worked there for just over a year. I'm still fighting for custody to get my son back. A year later, and after doing everything necessary, the state kept coming up with excuses to not give my son back. And it was such stupid things. They kept saying that I wasn't consistent on visits, and part of that was because they kept changing the visit places, the visit times, the visit coaching. We went through like 6, I'm not sure on the exact number, but somewhere around 6 case managers for CFS workers. They wouldn't assist me with anything. They wouldn't help with anything. The final stick, during all of this, he was finally placed in a therapeutic foster home, and it seemed to be going well. And he had been out of my care for over 2 years at this point when he got into the therapeutic foster home. And I was just happy to get to see him. We were having somewhat regular visits. I wanted him to be happy. I wanted him to have what he needed to grow up healthy. And a lot of stuff was going wrong, as it always does. The state has a limit that says a child can be out of the parent's custody for 18 months or 15 months, a little on the amount of time that was put in then. And the lawyers for CFS demanded a termination of parental rights because he had been out of my care for so long. The final thing we were waiting on, I had done everything else on my treatment plan. The final thing we were waiting on was family therapy. And CFS kept denying family therapy. My son's therapist, supposedly, and again, it's just the parts that I was told, that his therapist said he wasn't emotionally ready for family therapy. And so they kept putting it off. And that was the final thing needed. They said I didn't complete my treatment plan, my parenting treatment plan, without family therapy. And yeah, they wouldn't let us do it. But it got to the point where they told the judge that they needed to terminate parental rights, that legally the child could only be out of the home for so long before they had to terminate parental rights. And I wanted to keep fighting. I did. I wanted to keep fighting for him forever. And then they told me, CFS told me, there was a meeting, and I can't remember who all was there. I know it was me, my therapist, and possibly my case manager. I think my lawyer was present as well. And they told me that if I kept fighting, since he was in therapeutic foster placement, that there was not, he was in a concurrent therapeutic foster placement, which meant that if they terminated my parental rights, or if I relinquished my parental rights, that he would be allowed to stay with that family, and that family would adopt him. So the actual family that he'd been living with at this point for months, if not a year, would be his permanent home. And if I fought, if they did not terminate or relinquish my parental rights very soon, that he would lose foster placement because they didn't want him to stay with that family any longer if he wasn't going to adopt or be adopted. And that there were no other therapeutic foster placements in our area. And the only thing that would happen that he couldn't go back into the group home that he had been in previously, and that they would be forced to send him out of state to a care facility. Out of state. He would lose every bit of family that he knew, and that he would never get to see me again. And that if I relinquished my parental rights and stopped fighting them, that they would ensure that we retained visitation, and that not only would we retain visitation, but that I would get to spend more time with him and be a daily part of his life, and that he would that we would still get to be a family, but that he would have his adoptive family, his therapeutic foster placement family, to help care for his daily needs, and I would still be his mom, that I would still get to have a relationship with him and be close to him. And they told me if not, he would lose everything. He would lose every safety, every comfort that he had. And I cried a lot. And I made the decision, against my better judgment, to relinquish my parental rights. And I did that while stating that they lied, completely lied, and that they were forcing me to, one second. But yeah, I relinquished my parental rights, and the letter to the judge that my attorney filed stated that it was not my choice, that technically it was my choice, but that I was only doing it under duress, that I felt that despite all of the work that I had done, that they lied to the judge and told him that I never did any of it. And there's a whole lot that I'm not even going into where they flat out lied to the judge's face multiple times, and we had proof of it. And my lawyer never called it out, but my son's lawyer did repeatedly, and she was amazing, and was always supportive of me. But my lawyer was instructed by me to write in my filing for relinquishment all of the reasons that, or all of the proof that they had lied repeatedly, that the lawyers for CFS had lied, and that I was only doing this because the state was threatening me, that CFS was threatening my son's safety and happiness if I didn't. And the judge accepted it. Accepted the relinquishment, and that was just before Christmas in 2018. Just before Christmas. No, it was 2017, sorry, not 2018, 2017, I believe. And so yeah, just before Christmas, they accepted my relinquishment. And I had one visit left that was scheduled that year with my son for exchanging Christmas presents. And that happened that day. That visit happened, I believe, the day of or the day after they accepted the relinquishment, or finalized the relinquishment. Again, I didn't want to. I wanted to keep fighting, but the choice was between what I wanted and what my son needed. And I would make that decision. I didn't know better. I didn't know. I just wanted what was best for him. And so I did. And they told us, like, they told the judge that nothing would change as far as visitation, that we still had regular weekly visitation that was supposed to move up to 2 times a week. That we were going to move to overnight visitations where he could come and, like, stay at my house on the weekends and stuff like that. And the day that the judge accepted relinquishment, I got an email from CFS saying that this coming visit, your Christmas visit for Christmas presents, is your last visit. We have decided that you are not a good parental figure in your son's life, and we want him to adjust to being with his new family, and you're not getting any more visits. It was until that was extremely hard for me. I had that last visit with him, and I had to explain to him that they said that we wouldn't get any more visits. So it was bittersweet. I got him a Nintendo Switch that year for Christmas because I was working an awesome job. And I'd saved up and got him a Nintendo Switch. And yeah, he was really happy at first. Then they told him that it was just me trying to buy his love. Or at least I assume that's what they told him, because that's what he told me. He told me the next time I saw him that he didn't want me to buy his love, and that he felt that I was trying too hard, and that's why he didn't want anything to do with me. So yeah, they eventually contacted me a few months later and wanted to do visitation again. They said he was ready for visitation, and we did a little bit of visitation here and there, as they would allow. I got a different job. I got a job as a city bus driver. I was really excited and happy about that. And yeah, my health problems continued, but I still tried. There's a lot. The fact that this happened to me, the fact that I had all I wanted was to be there for my son, to give him the life that he should be able to have. And the state ruined both of us. And yeah, I found out a few years later that he legally changed his name because he wanted nothing to do with me. He felt that the state had told him, CFS and his therapist told him, that I didn't want anything to do with him, and that I had purposefully not done any of the stuff that I needed to until after they terminated, or until after I gave him up, because they told him that I gave him up, and that it was all the plan from the beginning to give him up. And they said that I didn't want him, and so that I didn't get a job and didn't get an apartment until after they approved me giving him up. And they lied to him about that. All of the times I had health problems, they told me that I couldn't tell him that I had health problems. So like for his birthday visits to the fair, there was one year that I had an infection that I had my wisdom tooth removed, and it got infected and went septic and got into my bloodstream, and the infection ate through my jawbone and broke my jawbone. And I was sick, I was injured. I went to the doctor, my face was swollen up. I was like, why does it hurt so much? It's not getting better. I went in and they did x-rays and sent me to an oral surgeon, and he checked it out, and he is, we need to get this infection under control. They sent me to infectious disease specialist, and had they were like, you need IV antibiotics immediately. The infection had almost killed me. They were like, you need emergency surgery on this. And that was a few days before my son's birthday that year. And they're like, we have to send you for emergency surgery. And I said, well, they're like, the first availability we have, and it happened to fall on my son's birthday, on the day that we had scheduled for his fair visit that year. And I said, no, I'm not doing the surgery. I'm not going to risk missing my son's birthday. And I was so sick I could barely walk. The infection was literally killing me. And I refused. I said, no, I won't let my son down. I'm not going to miss his birthday. And the surgeon he was so mad. He's like, this will kill you. It can kill you. You could drop dead in the middle of your son's birthday. And I was like, I can't miss his birthday. I don't know what he'll do if I miss his birthday. And so I was not able to be as present as I would like to be, because, had a really bad infection that was killing me. And I brought somebody with me to drive me and make sure that I wouldn't pass out. And if I did, they didn't want me to tell my son that I was sick. So I guess what they told him is that I wanted to make his birthday about me. And so I brought one of my friends to entertain me for his birthday. And no, that's not what I was doing. I was so close to dying. I just wanted to be there for his birthday, no matter the cost. And I've tried explaining it to him since, but he doesn't believe me. He says that I would lie about anything, and to him, I guess that's who I am, because I haven't been present for his life. And As much as I wanted to be, I wasn't. As much as I tried to be, from his point of view, I wasn't. So when he says he doesn't want anything to do with me, that he doesn't want me in his life, yeah, it's hard. It's very difficult. But it's his boundary. And I have to do what he wants. I have to allow him to set boundaries. Doesn't matter if it hurts me. Doesn't matter if it kills me. I will do what I can to be there for my son in whatever way he wants me to be. And even if that's to not talk to him, to not be part of his life. But the fact that this is something that the state has done to me, not just the state, but people in charge, the people that I was supposed to trust, the people that were supposed to help my son. Back when I found out about him thinking that I had purposefully chosen to give him up, and that when I found out that he didn't think that I fought for him and thought that I didn't do any of it, one of the other things I found out was that that nobody ever thought to tell me was that he had some memories that weren't exactly accurate, and nobody thought to question any of it. And one of them can, like, based off of the situation as I heard it, can be traced immediately back to that 2-week period where he stayed with my mom. And the reason why I can tell that is because the description of the room that he was in when stuff happened to him is descriptive of that time. Now, asking him about it, like when pointing out that that was my mom's house, not mine, and not when he lived with me, he says he never went to my mom's house, that he doesn't remember spending time there. And but the state attributed it to me, because to this little boy telling this story that he doesn't remember ever having gone to my mom's house, even though the state knows that he lived with her for a while. To him, I was his caregiver. I was his mom. And yeah, things messed up. They really did. And I was not the best. But I don't think either me or my son deserve what they did to us. And yeah, I've got court documents. I've got the emails. I've got all of the letters from the visit coaches that said that I was doing everything right. I have all of proof, and none of it matters to a little boy. Not so little anymore, but he still is inside, who thinks that his mother didn't want him, and who is still struggling and still vilified by the state. This little boy who's almost 18 now and isn't allowed to hang out with other kids, isn't allowed to be on his own, who basically lives under house arrest, because of the stipulations the state put on him. They made him into a villain in their minds, and in his. He is fully convinced that if he does one wrong thing, he's going to prison. He's also fully convinced that he is a predator, that he is a villain, that he is a bad person, and he's not. And I don't want this to happen to anybody else. I don't want anybody else's little boy or little girl to go through this. I don't want anybody to feel the way I feel. I don't want anybody to feel the way my son feels. And I don't know. There's nothing that I can do at this point. I've tried reaching out. I sent all of the information to my representative for my area. I know that there's been a class action lawsuit in the works for years. I tried to get added to it, and I was told that my representative would have to add me to it. And then he told me he would, and then he has ignored every correspondence I've sent since. I gave up a couple years ago because it's too much. It's ridiculous. And I know it's a lot. And I know I'm a lot, but I needed to discuss this. And I'm going to post it because I feel like it's something that should be talked about. No, I don't have plans to make a case against them, because if I did, my son, who's not quite 18 yet, would get, like, he's still a kid. He doesn't deserve to relive this so much, because they would drag him into court. Everybody else who's tried to make cases against the state for this has had the state pull out every wrong thing they've ever done. Them, their kids, has just destroyed them. And I don't want to do that to my son. I don't want anybody to do that to my son. I don't want anybody to do it to anybody. I know this is a lot to ask. But talk about this. Talk about stuff like this. It's not the BS that they gave me, that asking for help is admission of neglect. Everybody needs help. A single mom trying to do everything on her own with no family support whatsoever. Would you be able to? Like, if you had no ability to have a job, and even if you have an ability to have a job but you don't have any childcare and you're a single parent, is that something that you can do if you don't have any support whatsoever? Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. I wasn't the best mom. And no matter how much I tried, I messed up. But he doesn't deserve to suffer. He doesn't deserve to have suffered. Nobody deserves that. That's my story for today. Probably be more, because I have a lot of stuff to say, and I have a lot of people in my life that, not people in my life now, but a lot of people that have been horrible. And I'm ready to talk, and I'm not going to stop talking, because it's time. It's time to talk about this stuff. And I know I smile a lot, because I don't know how not to smile unless I'm going to cry. And I can't afford to cry because I've got to go back to work. This is my lunch break. Thank you for joining me on my lunch break today. I'm gonna make myself a cup of coffee and try to calm down. Thank you.